good afternoon, good morning, good day, wherever you are. Welcome to this edition of Hydrogen in 5 Minutes. Today, I have a very special guest. My guest today is Professor Dr. Michaela Kendall. She's the CEO and co-founder of Adelan, one of the world's first fuel cell businesses, and serves as a UK hydrogen champion for mission innovation. She has over 30 years of experience in the field of hydrogen fuel cells. And today I'm really excited to, ask her a few questions and get a sense of her take on the future of solid oxide fuel cells, especially. Thank you so much, Michaela.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Good. I would like to ask you a few questions related to your work and your expertise. So, first of all, for our audience, what are solid oxide fuel cells and why should energy users adopt them or adopt it for energy demanding systems?
Yeah, so solid oxide fuel cells are a fuel cell, which is an electrochemical device which converts fuel into power. And so it's a generating device. And there are lots of different types of fuel cells. This particular type of fuel cell, the solid oxide ones, is based on a ceramic membrane, which separates the fuel and the oxygen. And so it's a specific architecture, specific materials associated with it. And what's really unique about it is that it can use different fuels. And using different fuels, we call it fuel agnosticism, or it's a fuel agnostic device. It just means that you within a market, you have choice over what fuel you use. That gives you some flexibility in terms of costs, for example. It gives you flexibility in terms of the availability of fuels. And the nice thing is that it can also use hydrogen as a fuel, and that's the ultimate decarbonized fuel. So we can't use every fuel. We tend to use low molecular weight hydrocarbons as the most energy dense fuel that's possible for us. And that really is things like propane, natural gas, LNG, biofuels, so lots of biogases, then formulated fuels, RDME, and hydrogen. So there's a good range of fuels that we can use. We generate power from those fuels, and solid oxide fuel cells can scale down to milliwatts. So you could have a system which is very small, or it scales up to megawatts. So you could have power station sized solid oxide fuel cells. So the technology itself is interesting in that it's fuel flexible, it's also scalable, and it works particularly well in certain applications, and that's what we're seeing market growth in those certain applications at the moment. So yes, it's a fuel cell, electrochemical, very, very clean. So it's a very efficient technology, and that's the real winning aspect of the technology.
Excellent. Yeah, that was very good. Yeah. You already mentioned the word energy density. So my next question has to do with energy density. So the energy density of the solid oxide fuel cell, as you already mentioned, is dependent on the type of fuel, I imagine, used. Okay. And does the operational lifetime of the SOFC also depend on the type of fuel used?
It can do. So there are some fuels that are a bit harder for the fuel cell to use than others. But typically that's managed in an engineering sense, in that you might have some fuel pre-processing that can handle that. So it's not necessarily so much dependent on the fuel. So operational lifetime is not so dependent on the fuel. The lifetime is more dependent on the way you operate the fuel cell. So you have control systems which carefully control the system to operate in an optimal way. and that will dictate the lifetime. Now, there may be some applications where lifetime is not the most important driver. So to give you an example, a drone used in a military application is not lifetime is not the driver. But if you have a micro CHP system in a home, then you are expecting at least 40,000, if not 100,000 hours operation from that system. Whereas a drone may only require 1,000 hours, maybe a bit less, a bit more than that. So you've got different operational lifetimes, and that allows you to operate the fuel cell slightly differently in each of those scenarios.
Okay, excellent, good. I just want to focus a bit on Africa, yeah, because Africa has been trying to industrialize for the past 30 years now, and energy and access to energy seems to be a critical barrier towards that industrialization process. And do you see solid oxide fuel cells as a strong candidate for a new industrial, or as a new industrial energy source in Africa?
Absolutely. So there are certain industries that are really pulling for these technologies at the moment. So mining and oil and gas are probably the big market pulls at the moment. So mining and hydrocarbon exploration, both very carbon intensive activities. To decarbonize those activities is very difficult because they're often quite remote, and therefore solid oxide fuel cells are increasingly seen as an option, a technical option for those types of activities. So I would say in those scenarios, absolutely SOFC will be used in Africa. What's also interesting about it, because as I said, it's very scalable. You can have very small systems, very large. So like all distributed energy technologies, you have a new way of financing these technologies, because you, instead of having a big power station, which is a multi-billion pound investment for a community or for a government or for a business, you might deploy them in a sequential way. So you may only have 100 systems at first, and then 1,000, and then build up to 10,000. So the financing then is different, the structuring of that financing. And we've always found that in especially in rapidly developing countries, financing is always the key blocker. It's not that people don't need the technology. Obviously, everybody needs a decarbonized energy generator right now. The question is, how do you finance that? And big power stations are very, very difficult to finance, whereas deploying these systems in a sequential way is achievable. So we're always asking our finance colleagues for more innovation. We've been innovating to death in technology. I think we need a bit of financial innovation too.
Good, yeah. Good you mentioned finance in that, because my last question has to do with cost, basically. You know this market space quite well, I would say. So could you give us an estimate of what it would cost to set up, say, 100 kilowatt SOFC unit?
Yeah, so today the cost of solid oxide fuel cells is not necessarily representative of the cost that it will get to. So I always premise every cost conversation with that, because when we're making solid oxide fuel cells at the same scale as we make combustion devices, the prices will be minuscule compared to how they are today, because we just have not achieved economies of scale. But to give you a realistic price on that kind of system at the moment, I mean, the most recent quotes I've been seeing around 250, 300,000 pounds for 100 kilowatt SOFC system. It does depend, what kind of application, how it's integrated in. There's various considerations. But the capex is often the off-putting part. The OPEX is extremely good because you have a very fuel efficient system in place, and so your operating costs will be very reduced. So we would always also say, instead of looking at cost upfront, which is off-putting, I get it, but look at a total cost of ownership model, and this will ideally deliver you at least a cost competitive price over the lifetime of the product, or it could provide you with savings compared to many of the incumbent technologies.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Michaela. Thank you for being our guest today on Hydrogen in 5 minutes. It's a bit over 5 minutes, and I think that's a good thing. You have so much to unpack on this topic, and I do look forward to having you here again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.